Trusts are used to protect assets. A property trust is a very common trust designed to ensure the family home stays in the family. Take the following example. Mr. and Mrs. Palmer live in and own their own home. They make a will, leaving everything to each other and then to their son David. When Mrs. Palmer dies, the estate is passed to Mr. Palmer. Mr. Palmer goes on to live for another 30 years, during which time he meets Mrs. Decker and eventually marries her. After Mr. Palmer dies, the entire Palmer estate then passes to Mrs. Decker. When she subsequently passes away, her son and daughter, Jack and Jill, inherit everything. David inherits nothing. Also, let's go back and imagine that Mr. Palmer had not met Mrs. Decker, but instead needed residential care in later life. David would still lose out because the family home could be sold to cover the cost of his care. In contrast, had the Palmers organised a property protection trust when they made their wills, the situation would have been very different. Mr. and Mrs. Palmer would own their property on a 50-50 basis. This is known as a tenancy in common. When Mrs. Palmer dies, her half share of the property would be placed into a protective trust for David's future benefit. Mr. Palmer would own half of the property but have full use of the whole property for the rest of his life. He could also move house should he need to. If Mr. Palmer remarries or needs residential care in later life, David would still be guaranteed his mother's share of the family home. A property protection trust is the best way to ensure your share of the family home passes to your children no matter what the future holds.